Episode 1. The House That Shouldn't Exist. Chapter 1. The Last Road. Rain hammered the empty highway as Ethan Walker dragged himself forward, his soaked backpack clinging to his shoulders. 3 days earlier, he had lost the job he'd worked at for nearly 6 years. Yesterday, the bank had repossessed his apartment after months of unpaid bills. Everything he owned now fit inside one worn backpack. His phone battery had died hours ago. No money. No food. No destination. Only an endless road disappearing into a sea of towering pine trees. Thunder rumbled overhead as the last light of evening vanished behind dark storm clouds. The forest felt unnaturally silent. No birds sang. No insects buzzed. Even the wind seemed to avoid the ancient woods. Every step grew heavier. His legs trembled with exhaustion, and hunger gnawed at his stomach. "I just need somewhere to survive the night," he whispered. Then, far beyond the trees, a warm golden glow flickered. Ethan stopped. At first he thought it was a trick of the rain. But the light remained. Curiosity overcame exhaustion. Pushing through thick bushes and dripping branches, he followed the mysterious glow until the forest suddenly opened into an enormous clearing. His breath caught. Standing before him was a magnificent 3-story mansion unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its ivory stone walls gleamed beneath the rain. Towering glass windows radiated warm golden light. Elegant marble staircases led to massive carved oak doors. Crystal fountains flowed despite the freezing weather. Perfectly trimmed gardens surrounded the estate, filled with blooming flowers that somehow thrived in the middle of the wilderness. It looked less like a home, and more like a palace forgotten by time. Ethan stared in disbelief. Who would build something this luxurious in the middle of nowhere? Chapter 2. An Invitation. As Ethan cautiously approached, the enormous wrought-iron gate slowly creaked open on its own. No guards appeared. No security cameras watched him. No barking dogs broke the silence. Only the gentle sound of rain and the distant splash of the fountains. The neatly paved stone pathway led him toward the mansion. Every flower was perfectly arranged. Every hedge precisely trimmed. Not a single leaf lay on the ground despite the storm. The place felt impossibly perfect. Before Ethan could reach the front steps, the massive oak doors slowly opened. An elderly man stood waiting inside. His silver hair was neatly combed. His black suit looked immaculate. Not a single wrinkle disturbed the fabric. His calm grey eyes studied Ethan as though he'd been expecting this exact moment. "Good evening," the old man said politely. "You've had a long journey." Ethan froze. "You know me?" The old man's gentle smile never changed. "Everyone who arrives here asks the same question. I'm Victor, and you're welcome inside." The warmth spilling from the mansion contrasted sharply with the icy rain outside. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct warned him something wasn't right. Yet hunger, exhaustion, and desperation pushed those thoughts aside. He stepped across the threshold. The heavy doors slowly closed behind him, without anyone touching them. Chapter 3. Paradise with a Price. The mansion's interior was even more breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hung from impossibly high ceilings. Marble floors reflected the warm candlelight. Ancient paintings decorated every wall, their subjects staring with unervingly lifelike expressions. A roaring fireplace filled the grand living room with comforting warmth. Soft classical music drifted through the air, though Ethan couldn't see a single musician. In the dining hall, an extravagant feast covered the enormous table. fresh bread, roasted turkey, steaming vegetables, exotic fruits, rich desserts. Everything looked as though it had been prepared only moments earlier. Victor noticed Ethan staring. "You must be starving. Please, eat." Ethan didn't ask another question. He devoured the meal, unable to remember the last time he'd eaten so well. Victor watched quietly. He never touched his own plate. After dinner, Victor led Ethan upstairs to a luxurious bedroom overlooking the forest. The bed was softer than anything Ethan had ever slept on. Fresh clothes had somehow been prepared in his exact size. A handwritten note rested on the bedside table. "Sleep peacefully. Morning changes everything." Too exhausted to think, Ethan collapsed onto the bed. Within minutes, he was asleep. Then, exactly 3 a.m., his eyes snapped open. The room was silent, until, thump, a slow footstep echoed somewhere beyond his door. Drag. Another, as though someone was slowly pulling one leg across the polished floor. The footsteps moved closer, closer. Then, they stopped, directly outside his bedroom. Ethan held his breath. His trembling hand reached for the doorknob. He pulled the door open. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No shadows. Nothing. Then his eyes drifted toward the portraits lining the walls. Only moments earlier, each painting had faced straight ahead. Now, every painted face, every pair of lifeless eyes, had turned to look directly at him. A cold whisper echoed through the corridor. "You weren't supposed to wake up." Chapter 4. The portraits blinked. Ethan's heart pounded against his ribs. The whisper lingered in the hallway. "You weren't supposed to wake up." He spun around. No one. The corridor stretched endlessly beneath the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Every door remained closed. The dragging footsteps had vanished as if they had never existed. He looked back at the portraits. Dozens of painted men and women stared directly at him. An old soldier, a young woman holding a white rose, a little boy in a blue suit, an elderly couple smiling beside a fireplace. None of them looked frightening, yet every pair of eyes followed him. Ethan rubbed his own eyes. "This isn't real." He slowly stepped backward toward his bedroom. Then, the portrait of the little boy blinked. Just once. Ethan froze. His breathing stopped. The painted child's smile widened ever so slightly. A loud grandfather clock echoed somewhere downstairs. 3 chimes. Instantly, every portrait returned to its original position, as though nothing had happened. Chapter 5. Breakfast without a host. Unable to sleep, Ethan remained awake until sunrise. Morning transformed the mansion. Sunlight poured through the enormous windows. The house looked warm, peaceful, and completely ordinary. Victor greeted him in the dining room with the same calm smile. "I trust you slept well." Ethan hesitated. "I heard someone walking outside my room." Victor calmly poured tea. "This house settles at night." "And the portraits?" Victor interrupted before Ethan could finish. "Old paintings often make people uncomfortable." His answer felt rehearsed. Before Ethan could ask another question, Victor stood. "I'm afraid business calls me away. The house is yours until evening." With that, Victor walked out the front door. Ethan watched through the window. Victor disappeared into the surrounding forest. Not toward a road. not toward a car. Simply into the trees. Chapter 6. The Locked East Wing. For the first time since arriving, Ethan explored the mansion. Every room was immaculate. A grand library filled with books from centuries past. An indoor garden blooming beneath a glass ceiling. A music room where a grand piano occasionally played a single note by itself. Everything seemed perfect, until he reached the eastern hallway. Unlike the rest of the mansion, this corridor was cold. The wallpaper had faded. Dust coated the floor. At the end stood an enormous black door secured by 3 heavy iron locks. A silver plaque hung beside it. It read only 4 words. "Do not open. Ever." As Ethan leaned closer, he heard something. A faint scratching. Then 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. His blood ran cold. Someone was on the other side. Chapter 7. The Diary. Trying to calm himself, Ethan hurried into the library. While searching for answers, he noticed a loose wooden panel beneath one of the bookshelves. Inside was a leather-bound journal covered in dust. The first page read, "Property of Jonathan Hale. October 14th, 1987. The entries described a traveler almost identical to Ethan. He had been stranded. He had discovered the mansion. Victor had welcomed him. Everything matched. Then the handwriting became shaky. Victor says I may leave whenever I wish. But every road leads me back here. The forest doesn't let anyone go." Ethan's hands trembled as he turned another page. The final entry contained only one sentence. "If you're reading this, don't let Victor know you're searching the house." Suddenly, a floorboard creaked behind him. Ethan slowly turned. Victor stood silently in the library doorway, still smiling. "I see you found something that doesn't belong to you." Victor's smile never faded, but for the first time, his eyes didn't look human. They reflected no light at all, only endless darkness. To be continued.